So last summer, I invited the parents at Good Shepherd to read this book with me. It's called Brain Body Parenting by Mona Delahook. I'd heard so many good things about it, but I hadn't read it yet myself. So I thought, let's try this one out and see like how this can help us come up with new strategies in the parenting world, because us parents are always dealing with behaviors of children, right? There's so many annoying behaviors that go on. They're like, what do we do with these? Like, how can I try to peacefully address my child, but also help those behaviors to improve? So the first question that I wanted to ask this morning was, what is it that we actually want our kids to be like when they grow up, right? Like, what are these characteristics that we would like them to have, that we're hoping for? Like, we'll know we succeeded as a parent if our children are like this. So we have, let's see what we've got here. Okay. We've got some good answers here. What do we want our kids to be like when they grow up? Kind with a concern for others, a sense of how to use her gifts for the good of the world. Happy, kind, and self-sufficient. Emotionally attuned with their bodies and needs. Someone read the book. Confident in their choices. Kind. What we aspired to be when we were young without all the mess ups. Self-starters, compassionate, accepting of all people and walks of life. Kind and happy. I also put some like more practical things down here. A good job, right? We want them to be able to support themselves and to also have meaningful relationships when they grow up too, because that's really important. Okay, but what are the things that are really kind of getting in the way of these goals? It's like everyday life with kids, there's all these behaviors that drive us crazy. Okay, not listening, not brushing teeth, yelling. This must be someone with younger kids. Spiraling, meltdown of nose, kicking, hitting, biting, talking over adults in conversation. When I offer two choices, she picks one. And when we start moving forward with said choice, she starts screaming for the other one. That sounds about right. Nonstop yelling, bickering with one another, back talk, fighting with siblings, not listening to safety cues in public places like a parking lot or a store, a zoo, or a park. That really scares us, right? When our children are doing something that they could actually get hurt and they are not listening to me. Okay. And on top of that, we have so many stressors in the parenting world today. Just, this is a big one, I think. Always feeling like you're being judged by other parents. Do you feel that? I sure do. Worried you're not doing a good enough job. Like at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I should have done that differently. Oh, I'm not giving them enough green food to eat, or I'm not giving them enough sleep, or whatever it is. Work-life balance, judgment from others. There it is again. Not knowing how to discipline. And that's why you're here today. Not enough societal support. Time can easily be overfilled. Social media. Yep, that's a huge one. Feeling judgment for whatever choice. Mom guilt for because of judgment. Social media, there it is again. We always compare ourselves, right? Too many differing options for what's the best. So there's a lot going on in the parenting world. A lot of pressures on us, and then a lot of behaviors from our children, and then these hopes and dreams that we have for them, and how do we actually get them to that point? So this book does a really great job of looking at current neuroscience and how the brain and the body play a really big role in that, and how we as adults and parents can actually help support our children to get to those dreams that we have for them. Okay, so this is just a timeline of when a child is 0 until they're 24. And this is broken up into the way that Maria Montessori breaks it up into planes of development. So 0 to 6 is considered infancy, 6 to 12 is childhood, 12 to 18 is adolescence, and 18 to 24 is maturity. So let's start talking about this with looking at how we gain physical skills. So let's say you have a child who would like to be able to get the basketball into the hoop from the free throw line. So that's the physical skill they're trying to gain. And mom takes the child out to the court to practice a little bit. And let's say the child throws the ball and they miss. And the mom says, you know what, that is it. Go to your room. You think about what you've done, And next time you come out here, you better get it in there. Do you think that's actually going to help this child to gain the skill? Probably not. Probably not. What if they took the other approach of like, oh, you know what? You missed the ball this time, but if you get the ball in every other single time that we're out here for the next hour, I'm going to take you to get some ice cream. What do you think of that? Obviously this child would love to have that ice cream, but is it really up to them if they make it in? No. Is that really going to help them to get the ball into the hoop? Not really. What if they shot the ball and missed it and you said, oh, sweetie, you're just making mommy so sad. Why won't you get it in the hoop? Why would you miss it when I asked you to get it in? No, so the child probably feels like, oh, I'm making mom feel guilty and sad. I wish I could do better. Why am I doing this to my mom? Why am I making her sad? But is it up to the child if they get it in? Not really. Sometimes we'll do things like lecturing, right? That's it. You missed it. You know what? When we were in the car, we talked about this and you told me every time you threw the ball, you were going to get it in. So why are we out here and you're not doing it? You told me and now you're lying. Like we keep talking at them. What do you think your child is doing? La, 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 la. I'm not going to listen to you. Is that actually helping them to learn the skill of getting the ball into the hoop? And sometimes too, we'll even do things like comparing to another person, right? Like, well, geez, your sister always makes it in when she shoots. Why can't you do it? Like, do you think that's going to help them? They're probably ready to like figure out how to get back at their sister, right? And probably just angry at the parent. So lots of these strategies that we use in today's world of parenting really aren't that helpful, right? I mean, in learning this physical skill, it's very obvious because what do we actually need to get that ball into the hoop? Well, first of all, we just have to wait for development to unfold, right? Your body has to be big enough to hold that basketball. Your body needs to be tall enough to get it in the hoop. Your arms need to be strong enough, like with the muscles and all that. And you obviously wouldn't ask like a 2-year-old to take a regular basketball and try to get a free throw and make it in because obviously they just can't do that yet. So you have to wait for development to unfold. You also have to have practice doing the thing in real time. So let's say there's a child who started this skill at age 6 and they practice every weekend or every day after school. And there's another child who starts at age 12. Who do you think is going to be better at this skill? The one who's been practicing longer, right? So some children have more experience doing the thing that we're trying to get them to do, and some start much later. So in addition to just individual practice within the environment, we do something that's called scaffolding. And this is when an adult will offer assistance to a child or another person, any person offering assistance where a skill is not yet mastered, right? So for this one, with a young child, maybe like a 1-year-old, you just start with a ball, rolling it back and forth. Okay, this is a ball. We can roll it back and forth. Then maybe when they're a toddler and they're running around, they want one of those like little hoops with the little ball, and then they can practice actually getting the ball into the hoop, but it's their size. It's not the full size one. So we're taking them like step by step to get there. They're probably watching other kids in the neighborhood playing, or maybe watching it on TV with their family, or going to a real game and seeing professionals doing it. So it's like, wow, this is what it looks like when it's happening. It's modeled to them. Even when they're getting older, a short child might want to just do the real hoop, but, oh, let me just hold you up and then you can get it in. Or for the older child who really wants to do it on their own, let's just lower that hoop and then you can use the real basketball and shoot it in. So it's like this scaffolding where you take children step by step until they master it, okay? I was gonna let everyone know too that I can share these slides with you. So if you'd rather just like pay attention and not write, that's okay too. But if you'd like to write just when you're listening, that's also great. And here's the big question too. Once the child can successfully make a free throw, will they have success 100% of the time? The answer is no, right? Even if you've mastered it. Well, you did it yesterday. Why aren't you doing it today? Like, well, because I hurt my arm yesterday when I was wrestling with my brother, or I didn't eat breakfast this morning and I'm really hungry and I just don't have the same stamina, or maybe their eyes are starting to get bad and they don't even know they need glasses yet. So it could be like a physical thing. It could be something that happened yesterday, or just you shot and you missed. It happens, right? So now we're going to talk about emotional skills. So let's say the goal for this little girl is When she gets upset, to not hit her sister. Like something happens, her sister makes her mad. Her go-to is always just hitting her sister. Okay. So what if something happens and the little sister starts pounding on the older sister and mom or dad says, that's it, go to your room, think about what you've done. Next time, you better come and be nice to your sister, okay? Like, is that really going to help them get those skills to know how to be nice to the sister? Similar, what if we offered a reward? Well, if you don't hit your sister all day long, we're going to go get those cookies from the store that you really liked, okay? So just don't hit your sister. It's like, I wish it was up to her to make that choice, but it's much more complicated than that. She's not just choosing to. It's like she hasn't developed these skills yet to control those emotions and anger. What if you compare, well, your sister never hits you when she gets mad, so why can't you just be more like her? That's going to make them feel like, oh, I'm really mad at my sister, and oh, I'm mad at mom and dad. They're not going to be thinking about, oh, next time I'm going to be nice. They're thinking about more like, how can I get back at this person, right? So like all these strategies that we use aren't actually very helpful. It's just like what comes naturally to us. It's like traditional parenting. And unless we know another way, it's like, that's just what you do. Like, that's how I was parented. That's how I should do it with my child. So like, no shame to anyone who does these things, because we all do. I still do them, even though I do talks like this, just comes back to you. So what do we actually have to do to develop emotional skills? Similar to the physical skills, you first have to wait for development to unfold, right? So much of control of emotions has to do with the brain just forming, and that takes years to happen. So oftentimes it's very deceiving, because when a child starts talking around the age of 2, for example, and they can talk to you and respond and listen, and it seems to be very logical, even if they say like, oh, I'm not going to hit my sister, or I won't take that train from them, they can say that, but what their body can do, they cannot fulfill what they have said. And it's very deceiving, because we just assume so much from these little tiny people who have so much more development to do. And we take it personally, because we feel like, well, why are you lying to me? But it's actually just more development has not yet unfolded for this child. And then similar to the basketball example, you actually just have to have day-to-day practice for many years dealing with the situation. We have to practice not hitting your sister when you're mad. And how can we do that? Well, that scaffolding piece again. Like with the younger child, it's going to look different than the older child. Like for a younger child, often between my kids, I would just like stand like a barrier like this, like, oh, looks like there's a lot of hitting right now. I'm worried someone's going to get hurt. And then just kind of like push them apart like this, and help them to find a different place to play. You don't need to punish anybody. The goal is to keep them safe, right? And just to keep them apart, and then like get them interested in something else. And then we'll try again next time. Like the repeated practice with this scaffolded by an adult is what's going to help them to gain this skill better. This is another big piece that we often miss as adults, is just simply acknowledging your child's frustration. Like, oh gosh, you look really mad. What's going on? Someone's going to get hurt. I see a lot of hitting. I just like saying, you guys are really mad. Like, you're mad and I'm worried someone's going to get hurt. Let's just separate for a little bit. Like, you go in that room with dad. I'll stay in here with you. Let's cool down. So you kind of help them just work it out. Sometimes you're by yourself, so you have to be very creative with how you can calm the parties down, because it's just one of you. So, you can figure that out, work it out. But adults too can also scaffold by setting limits kindly and firmly. Like, there is too much energy in this room. We have got to separate. Like, you can go play in that room and you can come in the kitchen with me. Like, you can still say it with a firm voice, but it's like, whoa, something's going on. We got to stop this. And it's not doing any of that blame and shame or making them feel guilty, like you're making mommy sad, or why can't you be more like your sister? It's like, we are going to solve this problem, and we can do it in this way that is much more kind and firm. This is a big one we're going to talk about today, is co-regulating to help the child get back to a calm state. And that's basically, once you are calm as the adult, you can share your calm with that child to get them back to this state of receptivity. Because oftentimes in these moments of conflict, that's when they're like off the wall, or they're like shutting down and hiding. They can't hear anything you're saying to them. You have to get them back more to this receptive state before any learning or any problem solving can be done. And then also just working through problem solving ideas together. So like for young children, it's lots of times parents get this advice, let them work it out on their own, which is great. But first, they need to have someone model some ideas for them. Like, especially when they're younger, you can't just leave a 2 and a 4-year-old and say, oh, okay, you guys work it out. I'll be in the other room. Then you just hear pounding again. It's like sometimes you're like the physical barrier between them. Once everyone is calm, say, what are some other ways we could do that? Maybe you could have asked if you could use that when she was done. Or maybe she could offer you another toy that she likes until she's done. Or like just kind of going through. And lots of times they'll come up with their own ideas that seem crazy, but they both agree with it. You're like, okay, let's try it out and see. And oftentimes it works. So listen to your child too, but you can also help them come up with some ideas. And then this question too. So once this child can successfully resolve conflicts peacefully, will they have success 100% of the time? No, just like adults, like we still lose it, right? And we're adults. So oftentimes we have higher expectations for our children than we even have for ourselves. So just knowing like today is a hard day. You're not going to be able to put your shoes on by yourself. I'm going to help you. Or I know you didn't get a lot of sleep. I'm going to sit next to you right now while we're eating and just be with you, so just recognizing not 100% of the time are they going to get it right. I love this. I just found this yesterday and put it in. So what is emotional regulation? It's the difference between your child dropping their ice cream on the floor and having a huge meltdown, which will happen, and your child dropping their ice cream on the floor, feeling disappointed and asking for another one. So it's not like we want to help children to not feel these bad emotions anymore or like get rid of them. Like everyone is going to feel emotions. Everyone's going to get frustrated. Everyone is going to feel out of control, but it's what we do with those feelings that we're trying to help our child with. We don't want to tell them feelings aren't good. We want to tell them, feel your feelings, but what do you do with it? Okay. So another example is it's the difference between feeling angry, storming off and slamming the door, and feeling angry and saying, I'm so angry I could slam this door. I won't, but that's how angry I feel right now. So it's like they still have them, but they're not going to do that thing that's not really appropriate in your social environment. Okay. So it's not about not feeling the emotions. In both scenarios, there is that anger and disappointment. It's about feeling the emotion and then managing it and containing it and expressing it in a healthier way. So that's more the goal for our children. Okay, so this big question is like, what do we actually do to help a child develop those emotional skills that are going to, in turn, affect those behaviors and how they act them out? And then how do we get them to be those things that we want them to be when they grow up? So we're going to talk about something that Mona Delahooke points out in her book, Brain Body Parenting. She talks about the autonomic nervous system. And our bodies have a few different nervous systems in there. Like we have the central nervous system, which is our brain and our spinal cord. We have a nervous system that helps with our bones and our muscles. But this one specifically is the autonomic nervous system. And its job is to automatically regulate our internal organs, like our blood vessels and sweat glands and all their functions so that our bodies can maintain homeostasis. And this works as like feedback loops between the brain and then our sensory systems, which we're going to talk about a little more detail right now. So first of all, everyone has a brain in their head, right? And our brains, from the day we are born, are these prediction machines. So all the experiences we have, our brain takes them in and makes this basically like a database or a catalog of these experiences. And it catalogs, was this a safe experience? Did it feel good? Was it pleasurable? Was it just kind of a neutral experience? Or was it something that was scary? Was it something that was frightening? Did I feel defensive in the state? And the reason your brain does this is that so next time the same thing or something like it happens in the environment, I'm going to know how to respond to protect myself. Okay. So your body actually has these like physiological responses sent from the brain to tell your body like, you should get away from here, or you should shut down because you are not safe right now, or this feels good, I'm going to be happy and receptive. So your brain takes all these in, and the job of your brain is just for survival of your body. And the reason we have this is because it is an adaptive strategy that has worked for us ever since humans came to be for over 200,000 years. Some of the threats of the environment 200,000 years ago are much different than today, right? Like maybe you hear the roar of a predator and you know, whoa, time to get out of here, right? If I want to be safe. Or you see lightning and you hear a big thunderclap and you know, oh, got to get to safety right now because there's a big storm coming. So similar to that, today, like we might be standing by the road and we hear a loud car coming by without even realizing it. You just jump out of the way, right? It's like these automatic responses that happen. So we have these same strategies that have worked for us for all of humanity that are still with us to this day. And this is just an image of some of the functions of the brain. And if you look down at the bottom, the pink part, that's more like the primitive parts of the brain that really are with us from when we are born very well, like breathing, heartbeat. Like you don't have to tell your heart to beat, right? It just does it because your body knows to do that. Digestion, swallowing, alertness, sleep, body temperature. So this is the more primitive part of the brain. But the part of the brain that really helps with emotional regulation is more the upper part of the brain, where a lot of these executive functions emerge. And these take up to about, I think they say now like 25 or 26 years for a brain to fully mature. So if you think about, our children who are very young, oftentimes we ask of them many things that really it takes a lifetime to be able to do them because of how the brain is forming. So a lot of executive functions would be like being able to adapt to a change in the routine very smoothly, or knowing how to plan and to organize, be flexible, things like that. So those help a lot with emotional skills. So again, we have the brain, and now we are going to talk about the different sensory systems that exist. And when I was growing up, I learned about 5 senses. I don't know if you guys know about all the other new ones that have been discovered more recently. But this one was particularly interesting to me. This one is called interoception. And this is basically like your internal sensations. So every person will have sensations inside their body, and that these sensations provide information to our brain. And then our brain takes that in, and then it triggers a conscious feeling of things like hunger, pain, thirst, nervousness, even the need to use the toilet is part of an interoceptive feeling, like feeling that pressure on the bladder and knowing, oh, this means I have to go to the bathroom. And just in general, these interoceptive feelings generate our basic feeling states and moods. So this is what makes us feel our emotions. Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I jealous? Am I embarrassed? And it's like these feelings that we feel. And then the next step is, what do we do with those feelings, right? So interoception is huge. And there's just a lot of new research going on about this that I'm really excited to learn more about. For all of these senses too, a person can either be underreactive, so like they might not notice it as much as someone else. You might be neutral toward it, or you might be overreactive. So like underreactive might be if you have a child that has like a big gash on their arm and it's bleeding heavily and they just like don't notice it. It's like, wow, you have a really big injury and you're just playing and you don't notice it. Like they might be under receptive to that pain that they're feeling and they just might not notice it. So Mona Delahook gives us some strategies and how we can help a child to better be aware of some of these feelings that they have and to kind of get them more to like that neutral zone of like understanding. So what can parents do? So first, with interoception, parents can help to bring awareness to internal sensations. And that's like without judgment. Sensations aren't good or bad. It's just your body telling you things. Then you can name them like, oh, I hear a growl in your tummy. I bet you're hungry. Would you like a snack? And then you can, and furthermore, you can also help a child to become more aware of those like minute differences, like the pain example, like, wow, your arm is really bleeding. We have to take you to the emergency room right now, or something like that. On the flip side, you might have a child who gets like tiniest little cut. You're like, ah, which you all probably identify with very well. And you can, oh, wow, that looks like that really hurts. Let's go get a Band-Aid. let's take a deep breath. Like, you're okay. We don't have to go to the emergency room. This hurts. This is something we can take care of at home. I'll sit with you. Like, is there anything else that you need? It's kind of helping them to realize like it's not the end of the world, not judging them for it, not saying like, well, geez, that shouldn't hurt. It's just a tiny cut. Because to them, it feels really bad. So we just have to acknowledge like what is their body actually telling them, and then kindly and lovingly help them kind of like regulate them, and then talk to them about the gravity of it. Is it actually that bad, or is it not so bad? I had in the first handout I wanted to talk about was this kind of salmon colored one. And these are all directly from the book, but I thought if you should have anything printed from the book, this is so helpful, because she goes through all of the different senses and she does a stop and observe for parents, just so that they can like think of their own particular child. And then you could read these questions, like things that you might have never even thought about, like with your child. Like for example, for interoception, it says like, how comfortable is your child with identifying and naming basic sensations coming within their body? Does your child seem to notice if they're hungry or having a growling tummy? Can your child tell if they're sleepy and want to go to bed or take a nap? Can your child tell if they're in pain, where the pain is and the level of pain? And then she goes through and sees like, does your child have negative reactions to things? What positive reactions do they have? And she says here too, like you can model it for your child by naming your own bodily sensations and how you experience them as they happen in everyday life. I'm hungry, I'm going to have a snack. Or I'm thirsty, I want a big, nice cup of water. So it's like very simple things that you might already do anyways, but it's just like tuning them into like, I have the sensation, this is what I do about it. Okay. So we should also let children know that whatever they're feeling, it's okay. They're just clues to what's happening in their bodies, and can help us know how to help them feel better as well. So that's interoception. I didn't know anything about the interoception before I read this book. It was so interesting. Then we also have all these external sensations. So things that we receive from our external environments through our bodies. These are the usual ones that I knew about: hearing, sight, touch, taste, smell. Then there's two at the bottom that I had to learn a little more about. So hearing, we just have receptors in our ear that take in sounds, and they send those sounds to our brain, and it integrates with other sensory systems, and then we can make sense of those sounds. So for some children, like when we hear sounds, we often hear sounds right next to us in the foreground, and then sounds in the background. And if your child, this also is that same spectrum of, you can be underreactive, overreactive, or neutral. So like if a child is underreactive to sound, for example, you might feel like, gosh, whenever I call them to dinner, they just don't listen to me. Like, why are they being rude? But it's like the child is sitting here doing something totally engaged. Their sound is underreceptive. They hear mostly sounds around them, like, oh, there's a car driving by out the window, or, something right next to me. I hear my sister crunching on her Cheerios or something. But that background noise, I just don't hear it. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just, Mom, come closer and talk to me, and then I can hear you. So lots of times we can change the way that we communicate with our children too, to help them with that. So if you notice, like every time you're trying to tell your child something from far away, they just don't listen, you might try walking over to them, looking in their eyes, maybe connecting with them for a second, like, oh, what are you doing? Oh yeah, you're watching your favorite show. Oh, what's happening right now? And then you've connected with them for a second, and they say, oh, by the way, dinner's on the table, it's time to come. It's like just a little more friendly. And I still yell across the room at my kids. I'm not saying every time you have to do this, but it's like just a different strategy. If you like feel at the end of your rope, it's like, oh, maybe I could try this today. I'm gonna go sit next to them and look in their eyes and put my hand, a gentle hand on their knee or something. So there's just different ways that we can like accommodate those things. Sight in the visual system. We just see the cones and rods in our eyes take in things from the environment, sent to the visual processing center of the brain, and then we interpret it visually. And some children might even just through sight experience things as like, that doesn't feel good to me. Like seeing broccoli on a plate, that does not feel good to me. I do not like the sight of this. And it's like, obviously as parents, we know like, oh, we want to get our kids to eat vegetables. That's a great thing, but like, this child is having a physiological response to this broccoli because it's scary to them. Like for some reason, this broccoli is not looking good. So having a kind attitude about like, oh, you don't like how that looks. Well, you don't have to eat it right now, but mommy and daddy are going to eat it or something. Just like giving these cues of safety around these things that are very scary can help them to eventually get there instead of like the forcing it on them sort of thing. So she also has good examples of all of these stop and observes, like the sight one, for example. What kinds of sights calm your child and bring joyful interactions into your relationship? Are there certain picture books that your child loves to read with you? Sitting in your lap, the tone of your voice, along with the drawings or pictures, are likely a winning combination by your child's overall sensory experience. This is a big one too. I love this because body language is such an important thing with our children and other humans in general. Notice how your child responds to you when you're tense in the body or the face. We often wear our platform on our visage, transmitting our emotions through our facial expressions. That's another reason to check yourself and give yourself what you need so that you can soothe your child through your empathic facial expressions. You and your child will both benefit. So I always want to remind parents, just your body language is that first thing that your child notices and takes in. Okay, so similarly, smell and taste, those are very highly connected. So some children might even like gag at a certain smell or something because they're overreactive to it. Taste and smell also have a lot of very emotional memories with it too. Like we might have happy memories about food we've eaten, like, oh, that Thanksgiving dinner, every time I smell it, it just makes me think of family time and being together and that special time of year where it's cozy. Or like maybe you think of like, oh, spaghetti, that's that thing I ate right before I got the stomach bug. And I am not going to look at spaghetti again in the same way for years because you associate this negative thing with it. So that might be happening with your child too. Okay, so these are the more interesting ones too, the body awareness and the proprioceptive system and balance in the vestibular system. So I have to read this one because I don't know it off the top of my head, but so the proprioceptive system, it tells the brain about our body's positions, like where our bodies are in space. Like if you're standing, if you're sitting, you're bending or reaching, your muscles, joints, and your body sends message to the brain about when and how the joints are bending, extending, being pulled or compressed upon. And this is the sense that helps us kind of move efficiently around rooms and places. So like if I was walking past this row of chairs here, it's the sense like when I'm walking, I don't even have to look, but I know how to go around the corner without bumping into the edge. So oftentimes you might see your children doing some of these things. Now, just for young children too, coordination and that sort of thing is just something that takes time for development to unfold. But if you notice it like particularly heavy or unusual in your child, it might be their proprioceptive system is not yet fully integrated. So that's something that even some children work with occupational therapists or physical therapists to really help better integrate those systems because those specialists know so much more about what actual activities to do with that child to help them to gain those skills. So it's really fascinating to learn about like, oh, maybe they do need a little help from a specialist that could give them those activities that will help that proprioceptive system. Like sometimes too, even children in your family or like being a teacher, noticing this with children in the classroom, like one child touches another child and they think they're being gentle, but they're actually pushing really hard. And so this can cause like some social issues because the child who is pushing hard just thinks they're giving their friend like, oh, a little tap on the back, but like the other child interprets it as like, this child's attacking me. So it just helping both children to understand, what's actually going on here. Like, oh, this person was trying to say hello to you. What's a different way they could say hello to you? Or that felt too rough for this person. Like, how could we talk to them or touch them more gently? So just helping them to grade things again in real life. Like, is this heavy? Is this light? Is this a strong push? Is this a light push? So just working through that information with them is really helpful. And then balance in the vestibular system. This one is interesting too, because it has to do with sensors in your inner ear, and it sends brain to your information about the position of your head and your entire body in relation to gravity and movement. So this really affects our balance. I don't know if any of you have ever had like vertigo before or something like that, but that's what's going on here. These sensors in your inner ear are out of whack. And so you cannot see straight. The room is spinning. you know, and this is like one of the senses that for a young child, for example, like they might be affected by motion sickness or something like that in the car. Like if you have a child who seems ultra sensitive to riding in the car seat in the car, it might be, wow, they're sitting in this car seat in a moving car, looking out the window at all these things moving by them really fast, and they are just feeling like dizzy and nauseous. We don't even know. We just think, oh, they don't like the car seat or whatever, but this might be going on. So just like another way to understand our child's behaviors. It's so helpful. So yeah, I really encourage you when you go home to read this over and think about your own particular children, because for everyone, it's going to be very different, just based on their own body. How do they take in life through their senses, and how does their interoception work? What is their interoceptive awareness? Again, there's that underreactive, overreactive, neutral. Some children too can be sensory craving. Like you might notice a child that just wants to swing, or they just want to jump on the trampoline and they will not stop jumping on the trampoline. So they're like needing this input on their body. And so they're trying to get it in whatever way they can. And this is something else too, that like a occupational therapist or physical therapist might work with a child to do, to help them to give their body what they need so those cravings won't be so intense, just so that normal life can happen a little more fluidly. So that's the handout here. Oh, this is kind of a gross image, but I put it up here because it's interesting. It's called a homunculus. But basically, like if our body parts were in proportion to the amount of space it takes up in our brain, this is what our bodies would look like. Isn't that so interesting? Like, look at the hands. They are so big, and the lips in the mouth. We take in so much of the world and our day-to-day life through touch. You know, like this is our biggest sensory system because skin covers our whole body, right? And just like taking things through our mouth. So interesting. Sorry, it's kind of gross, but I think it's really cool to see. So what do we do to help our children? We model respect for our body signals. So we talked about this already. We help children become aware of and identify their sensations. We don't judge them as good or bad. We're curious about them. Like, oh, well, what does that mean? What could I do to help them? And it's fascinating too, because just this ability to understand sensations and name them is one of the key things in helping children to be able to self-regulate. Just understanding their signals from their body and naming them. Like this, being able to self-regulate is what helps with these behaviors, okay? And sometimes as parents, without even realizing it, we hint to our children that they shouldn't be listening to their body signals. And we do this with the best intention, right? Like after you just eat dinner, your child says, Mom, I'm hungry. You're like, no, you're not. You just had dinner. You know, it's like we're telling them, don't listen to your body because I know better because I'm the adult. But instead of doing that, you could just simply say like, oh, are you still hungry? You know, do you remember we just had dinner? You don't think that wasn't enough for your body? Like ask your stomach, am I still hungry? And then maybe they say, I'm still hungry. And so you decide like, okay, would you like a snack? Or, you know, we're gonna wait until this time for dinner. So you might feel a little uncomfortable, but I think it's okay. And we're gonna have dinner at this time. So do you see like the same result can be achieved just like in a different way? Just acknowledging it. Or like the pain example, like tiny little cut and your child freaking out instead of saying, oh, it can't hurt that bad. You're going to be fine. You know, we think by minimizing it, we're going to help them feel better. But what they're actually hearing is, oh, you're not listening. You don't understand what's going on with me. Like, how can I get you to understand? And that's often why the crying elevates. It's like, they're not listening to me. I need to let them know this really hurts. But oftentimes, like the second you acknowledge it, like, oh, wow, that looks really like that hurts a lot. You can see them their bodies start to relax. Like, oh, she understands. Oh, you know, it won't always do that, but it helps. It helps them to ramp it down instead of ramping it up. So all humans in general, even us as adults, we just want to be understood. We just want to be understood. So there's this concept of neuroception, which is these feedback loops that are happening between the brain, right, which is your prediction machine, taking in all this information about all the experiences you've had, and, you know, was it safe? Was it neutral? Was it scary? And then you interpreting these internal sensations, having feelings, also taking in things from the environment. So can you see how each person would be so different. Everyone has a different brain. Everyone has had different experiences. Everyone has different interoceptive awareness. Everyone takes in the world through their senses very differently. And so children and all adults have this subconscious detection of threat or safety based on all these things and these feedback loops working together. So here's the question. Are some humans just doomed to this life of fear because of, their interoception or their senses or their past experiences? And are some humans just lucky enough to feel good and safe? Where do we actually have influence or control over this? So this is Dr. Stephen Porges. He's the one who came up with this, who coined this term neuroception from polyvagal theory. And this is what really changed Mona Delahook's life and her approach to working with families when she was a clinical psychologist. And she found this was the missing piece that we needed to understand more fully. So Dr. Stephen Porges says, neuroception is basically just this body's ability to detect threat from the environment, from other people, and from sensations within. It's this process that happens automatically and instantaneously, okay? So I'm not choosing it, it's just what happens. And the goal is, again, protection and survival. And he tells us too that all living organisms, even plants, have a neuroception to detect threat, which I would love to learn more about. Like, how does the plant world do this? Like, what's happening within the plant when they detect threat? I didn't get to learn about that yet, but I'm so fascinated to learn more. Even single-celled organisms, even organisms that don't have fully developed nervous systems, have this neuroception to threat to help them try to survive, all the way up to humans. Okay, but here's the cool thing, that mammals are very unique in that we also have a neuroception to safety. So mammals, we have this expanded capacity for neuroception in which we not only react instantaneously to threat, but we also respond instantaneously to cues of safety. Isn't that incredible? Like, we as humans and mammals, we have this superpower just within us, just our bodies and our being, to help someone who is feeling scared, feeling threat, to calm down just with our presence and other strategies that we can use. This is highly underutilized in our current parenting culture, because oftentimes we'll send the child away when they're bad, right? When they're bad, I say that with quotes. You're melting down, you know what? You go to your room and you come out when you're calm. But what do they actually need to calm down? They need that co-regulating from you adult, who can be a little more stable. Like, if you're not stable, that's probably not a good thing. But when you are stable, then you can share that calm with them. And the more reps that this child gets practicing that calming down from the state of threat with the help of someone else, the faster they will be able to self-regulate. So this is this key that a lot of people don't understand. They think they need to calm down, then come back. But you actually have to help them calm down, and that will get them to have better behaviors in the long run, because they can emotionally regulate themselves. The more you do it with your child, the faster and the more skills they will have in being able to self-regulate. So interesting. So she also gives us this great term called the platform, which is a way to think about our brain-body connection and whether it's vulnerable or whether it's sturdy. So first, let's talk about the word emotions a little bit. Emotions actually comes from the root word movere, which means to move. And emotions are the things within us that stir us into action, right? We've talked about this a few times. I'm feeling happy. I'm going to go give my friend a hug, or we're going to go on a walk. I'm feeling sad. I'm just going to sit on the couch and read this book. I'm feeling angry. I'm going to go slap my brother right now. These are the things that make us move, that lead to our behaviors. And humans are adaptively wired to have these sensations, feel emotions, and then act. And it's these behaviors that give us, the observer, clues. What's going on with this person? Are they sensing threat from the environment, or are they feeling safe? Are they vulnerable or sturdy? So just like you can have a financial or a financial budget, where you do deposits and withdrawals of money. You can also have a body budget, which has deposits and withdrawals. Internally, this body budget tracks things like water, salt, glucose levels as they fluctuate. They help you to know if you're hungry or something's hurting, what your feelings are. And externally, this body budget tracks what are our experiences? What have we done? What are we receiving from others? And the way she talks about it is helpful because you can say we can have withdrawals from our body budget or we can have deposits. So a withdrawal could be anything that's affecting our interoception, our sensory systems, or our brain. Like I'm dehydrated, I'm really thirsty, I'm so hungry, I am sleepy, I didn't get enough sleep last night. In the book, she mentioned sleep is like the number one thing that can change everything. I think we all know that, but it's the hardest thing to change, especially when we have little kids, because you really don't have control over it. But the second you start to have that bit of control over like how much sleep you get, take advantage of it, because that's going to be a game changer. Someone's physically hurt, or if you're a young child under the care of an adult, you don't really know. Like, that's scary. I don't know what to expect from this person. Do they know how to help me when I need to go to the bathroom? Do they know what snacks I like? Maybe you've had an argument with a friend, or there's a loud sound bothering you. This is another great term that comes from Dr. Stephen Porges. He talks about broadcasting states from one person to another. So just like that power of the body language, like an intonation can make someone feel threat. A gesture, a face, narrow eyes. Like if I look at my child like this, are they going to feel safe and receptive? Or are they going to be like, shut down, So think about what we're doing with our bodies too. That could be a withdrawal and make them feel more vulnerable. Deposits, on the other hand, are things that help to make the brain-body connection detect more cues of safety. So a hug, a drink of water, a snack, taking a nap, laughing with friends, a warm blanket, some of those sensory things, like maybe that's really cozy for your child. Special time with a parent. Like, I haven't sat down and talked to you like face to face. Let's just talk for a minute, or play trains or whatever. And then again, just that simple broadcasted state from another person, just like the presence of the parents with the soft face, the gestures, things that signal safety and acceptance. So I came up with this image to further think about this, of just the platform being like a table with legs on it. So a sturdy platform would be one. Each of these legs is like a deposit to the body, which helps it to be more sturdy. I've gotten enough sleep, the noise level's right, I have enough food in my belly, the texture of my clothing feels good right now. I'm generally healthy, so I'm good. I'm with people that I know and trust. It's the right temperature in here. So it's like a lot of these different things. I'm good. I'm detecting cues of safety. Vulnerable platform. Maybe you have some good deposits to your body budget, but there's some withdrawals too, like, oh, didn't get enough sleep. It is way too loud in here. I can't think. I haven't had water in a long time, so I'm not feeling good there. I am starving because I did not eat anything yet. So in this state, people tend to detect more cues of threat. So like the exact same thing could happen to someone and they could interpret it in very different ways based on their platform. Like an example, like when I come down in the morning and I've had a good night of sleep and my 3-year-old is like, Mommy, I can't find my shoes. If I haven't had a lot of sleep, I'd be like, that's it. Like, just, I'm going to the car, you find them yourself, that sort of thing, where I'm feeling it as like a threat versus I had a good night of sleep and I come down, Mommy, I can't find my shoes. Oh, that is so frustrating. You know what? Can I help you look for them? Let's go look for them together. And it's like that changes so much of the feeling and just how we respond. So same thing for your kids. If they didn't get a good night of sleep, how are they going to act in the morning? So just thinking about how different days bring different things based on where our platform is at. So if a child has a vulnerable platform, what kind of deposits could we help to put into their body budget? And some of it too, like if they're younger, you might have more control over deciding like, we are going to go home and take that nap versus like, we're just going to stay out and play. Because as the adult, like that nap is going to be the key to their afternoon being peaceful and mine too. So I'm having fun, I want to stay, but I know for my child, I need to take them home for that nap. Or what, I'm giving a lot of young child examples. This could translate to older kids too. So just thinking about as the adult, how can I help with these deposits that I actually have control over? Or just understanding your child further, like they have a lot of withdrawals. That's why they're acting like this, instead of taking it personally.